Let's talk more about the U.S. perspective now with Congresswoman Sara Jacobs, a Democratic member of Congress. She's on the House Armed Services Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee. Congresswoman, it's good to have you back on BBC News. What is your reaction to what we have seen, not only the strikes by the U.S. and Israel, but the fact that it appears, according to President Trump, that the Supreme Leader has been killed?
Yeah, look, I'm incredibly concerned. First of all, President Trump has no authorization from Congress to do these strikes, and the Constitution is very clear that it's Congress who gets to declare war and peace. But even more importantly, even if these were authorized, I think this is a real strategic blunder. The United States is very bad at military adventurism in the Middle East. We are very bad at regime change, and we are very bad at anticipating what will happen after we decapitate a leader, like supposedly happened with the Supreme Leader in Iran. What we often see after these kinds of regime change military operations is that you have civil wars, you have real volatility, you have potentially failed states. Iran is a huge country and a very strategic part of the world. The last thing we want is a failed state there. And often what you see is that, you know, the people with the guns, who are often more hardline and worse than the regime itself, end up being the ones who take power after. And we've seen this time and again in Yemen, in Libya, in Iraq, right?
Congresswoman, can I just jump in there and ask you, when you say the last thing we want is a failed state there, what President Trump, his administration has said is that essentially you had a rogue state in the region, one that was empowering terrorism and attacks on U.S. allies through proxies like Hezbollah and Hamas, and that Iran posed a direct and real threat to the U.S.
Look, I think the Iranian regime has been horrible for regional stability and to their own people, as we saw with the crackdowns of the protesters in Iran. But let's be clear, President Trump doesn't actually care about the human rights of the Iranian people. We know that because he's literally sending Iranian people who are in the United States trying to seek asylum back to the country with no care for them. We've seen already very credible reporting of civilian casualties. And while Iran was destabilizing the region, a failed state in Iran with that many people is only going to destabilize the region more. You're going to see refugee outflows, and that's about 94 million people who will be destabilizing all of the countries around it, not to mention potentially trying to come to the United States.
You mentioned the role of Congress. As things look right now, it doesn't appear that you and your fellow colleagues, Democrats, would have enough votes to force a war powers resolution. So what can Congress do if you want to exert pressure on President Trump?
We are going to force a vote on the war powers resolution when we are back in session next week. Personally, I think Speaker Johnson should call us back into an emergency session right now so we can begin this debate and get briefed and get all of the information that we need. But look, I represent the biggest military community in the United States, San Diego, and I think we owe it to our service members to have a real debate before sending them into harm's way. And so I hope that all of my Democratic colleagues and enough of my Republican colleagues will vote for this war powers resolution and reassert the fact that one person does not get to decide whether or not the United States goes to war or peace, but that there must be a debate in front of the American people as the founders who wrote the Constitution required.
It could be, according to the president's words, an operation that lasts at least another week, if not longer. What concerns you the most at this point?
I'm very concerned about the safety of our service members in the region. We already see that the Iranians are targeting our troops in Bahrain, in Qatar, in UAE, in Saudi, not to mention all of their proxies that they have close to our troops in Iran and in Lebanon. And so I'm very concerned about our service members, but I'm also concerned that even if Donald Trump stops bombing next week, we've already fundamentally changed the trajectory of Iran. And the destabilization is not just going to end because Donald Trump has lost focus and has decided to stop bombing. There is a real likelihood of armed civil war, armed conflict within Iran, potentially the Iranian regime further cracking down on people because they are now very insecure. There's a lot that we don't know about what's going to happen and that we are not prepared for. I have yet to see a real strategy or a real end game here.
Before we let you go, Congresswoman, Can I put to you the narrative that we've heard from President Trump and his administration, which is that from Venezuela, the operation to seize Nicolas Maduro, to now, if it is indeed confirmed that the Ayatollah himself has been killed, that he has been going from success to success in establishing U.S. power and taking down rogue regimes around the world?
President Trump literally ran for president by saying he was going to be the peace president, that he was not going to do regime change wars. He was not going to do nation building. And often what we see in these kinds of cases is that potentially immediately after you take out a leader, there might be things might look good, right? President Bush declared mission accomplished in Iraq. We were able to get Gaddafi in Libya. But if you look at Iraq and Libya now, you can see that actually those consequences and the destabilization that occurs reverberates for a long time after. And so I think we haven't even begun to see the real consequences of these illegal and reckless actions that this president has taken.
Congresswoman, thank you as always for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.